Streaming only on Peacock.
John Wayne Gacy is suspected of having killed as many as 32.
Straight from the killer's mouth.
They want you to believe that I alone committed these murders.
The new gripping 6-part documentary series that investigates the crimes that shocked the nation.
The thing everybody thought they knew wasn't the whole story.
John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise. All episodes streaming now.
Devil in disguise.
Only on Peacock. Streaming only on Peacock.
John Wayne Gacy killed 32.
Straight from the killer's mouth.
They want you to believe that I alone committed these murders.
The new gripping 6-part documentary series, John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise. All episodes streaming now, only on Peacock.
Hello and welcome back to What's Up Doc, the true crime documentary podcast. I am your host, Gemma Delaney, and I am here to tell you what is up. What is up with the latest true crime documentaries. This week's episode, funnily enough, you'll hear in a minute anyway, you'll know what I'm on about. It was one of the first episodes of season 3 that I recorded. It was recorded back in the Christmas breaks. There's a lot of talk of Christmas and New Year's resolutions. And also, for the love of God, please forgive me. The audio quality is absolutely shite because it was one of the first episodes I recorded via Zoom. So whereas normally I would obviously have guests in my little lair in my studio, this was all online and it was a learning curve. And thanks be to Jesus, I've gotten better at it. But yeah, not so hot with the audio quality on this one. Look, hopefully the guest will more than make up for it. On this week's episode, we have broadcaster, TV presenter, radio presenter, comedian, and just all around fucking really sound bloke, Keith Walsh of the Keith Walsh podcast fame. Keith was good enough to come on and listen to my nonsense and shite on about the new Netflix documentary Trial 4 with me. And I hope you enjoy this one. Keith Walsh, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Gemma. How are you?
I'm good. How'd you get on over Christmas?
I had a fantastic Christmas. Very nice. I enjoy the quiet life, so it suited me.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people were upset not being able to see friends and family. It suited me down to the ground. I had everybody I needed here within the 4 walls of this house. So I was very happy.
I think we even said that during the production meeting, did we? I was saying as well that I'm I won't say notoriously antisocial, but I like my own space. So this lockdown malarkey is suiting me down to the ground.
Yeah, it's not a cool thing to say, but it's fine. I'm fine to have to stay away.
Maybe it's something that comes with age. I don't know. But yeah, like you said, everyone that you need being in the 4 walls of the house. That's a nice way of putting it, actually.
But it's definitely age because I'd imagine, like, my daughter's 18 and I'd say between the age of 18 and 28, I craved other people and being out.
You'd be climbing the 4 walls trying to get out. Yeah. And like I was saying to you, I have a 14-year-old daughter, 15 actually, she's just gone 15. But the very same, like, you know, I thought up until this point we didn't have the terrible teen, but we're getting there definitely. She's struggling with lockdown. 100%, and every day it's like, can I go out and see my friends today? And I'm like, nope, we're still in level 5 and we've got 10 million new cases. So, but look, I see there on Instagram, you're doing something exciting. You've been busy anyway. You're cracking on with this 100 days of no booze. But you've been booze free for a while now though, right?
Yeah, a year now.
Yeah.
I started last year when I did at the end of Christmas, got through Christmas, usual Christmas, and then I was doing a lot of work with RTE. I was covering a lot of radio stuff for the week where everybody's off. So I decided to just work and stopped boozing kind of shortly after Christmas, and then decided in my wisdom to do 100 days of no booze because I saw Ciara Kelly on News Talk does this thing.
That's right. Yeah, I wondered if you'd been inspired by her. All right, yeah.
Yeah, so I said, I wonder what it'd be like to do 100 days of no booze. And I didn't really think how long 100 days was. I was thinking, that'll bring me up to middle of March, maybe Paddy's weekend. That wouldn't be too bad. But it's a lot longer than that. It's 10th of April if you start on the 1st. I'm glad I didn't know how long it was because, I did the 100 days of no booze. And then I just continued. And kind of had a couple of weekends where I drank during the whole year, and after those weekends, it sort of made me double down on the fact that I'm not probably ever going to drink again. So yeah, I've had a year of it, and then this year I thought it might be interesting. Other people might be interested in doing it, so I sort of just put it out there. And we have we have a WhatsApp group with about 200 people in it, which is the biggest WhatsApp group.
That's deadly. 200 people. Wow, that's amazing.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then we have a separate Instagram page, the No Booze 100 crew. That's what we are. And it's good. It's good.
We're hip to the happening beat. We're down with the kids.
Yeah, just it'd be nice to see, even if one or two people, get through the 100 days.
That's deadly. Yeah. But because I mean, it's very of the moment. I mean, a lot of my friends have gone, boozeless over the last couple of years. My brother and his partner were probably the first that I knew of maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And like that as well, it was a Christmas thing. I don't know if it was a New Year's resolution or what, but come Christmas, they decided to just knock it on the head. And I mean, it's not that they ever drank excessively to begin with, but I suppose just Irish people as a habit, when we do drink, we don't stop at one. You know what I mean? It's not a glass of wine, it's a bottle or whatever. But yeah, there's so many of my friends boozeless. And then, you had a post on Instagram there a couple of weeks ago as well, and you were looking for recommendations for like boozeless drink. And I commented under, we started it about a year ago as well. It wasn't at Christmas time, though. It was probably a year. It was only 12 months last summer. And like that as well, I don't know, we just decided we didn't want hangovers anymore, and decided to try the boozeless stuff. And like, there's no difference in the taste. This is what I keep saying to people. Definitely with, some of the beers. The beers, I think, are probably the better ones. And the no secco as well. The wines, not so much. They're not great. And that's probably why I haven't gone completely teetotal. I do like a glass of wine every now and then. We had some no secco last night. It's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, it's perfect. It's fine.
There's no difference, like, yeah.
And definitely a can of Heineken 00 when you get the craving.
Yeah, it's lovely. Yeah.
Does it for me every time. So, yeah, I mean, and, again, it could be an age thing, but I think I just want to be more productive. I want to get more stuff done,
Yeah.
And I just have so many hours in the day now, so I can do whatever I want, which is great.
Yeah, I suppose that's what it is. It's getting busier, and like you said, wanting to be more productive and just not being able to justify, wasting a day in bed, dying, or your head in a bucket, vomiting, like after being on the Raz the night before. But,
and I never really got bad hangovers, which was a great excuse to drink. But it was just I would feel very lethargic during the week and not really care about things. It wouldn't be the hangover; it'd be the following week, the sense of doom, the sense of like horror and guilt and the fear that would just last until Thursday, and I just wouldn't get anything done. So, yeah, here's to the weekend. Here's to the week. Here's to the rest of the week.
Yeah, I mean that's. I'm assuming then. Well, as you said, you started this last year, but this is kind of your version of a New Year resolution, or have you set yourself any New Year's resolutions this year?
No, nothing really. I'm just keep being as brilliant as I am.
Being the exceptional human being I am.
Yeah. Just keep being perfect. No, I'm still very fascinated by things like therapy and self-improvement.
Yeah.
So just to continue trying to be the best version of myself, I suppose, is one way of putting it.
Yeah. Well, a nice little segue, I think that is, into then true crime and true crime documentaries, because like that's what I always say. I'm big into self-improvement and psychology, and I think both of those things go hand in hand. So I think if you have an interest in psychology and how the mind works and how the brain works, you'll naturally have an interest in true crime as well. Or maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just how it resonates to myself. But when we had our previous meeting, our production meeting, and I asked you, were you a true crime enthusiast? And you were very honest in that, not really. Like you'd watched a few documentaries on Netflix. But how did you find it when I set you this task?
Yeah, I think I'd said to you that I enjoyed, and my daughters kind of would be more into it. I think it's a young person's game, young people like yourself. But I'd watched The Staircase, and obviously the big ones when they come along. you hear about them and then you recommend it. And podcasts, true crime podcasts. I like the Aussie one, which is, I think it was called Teacher's Pet.
That's right. It's really good one, actually. That's
which is
cracker.
absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
And to a lesser degree, Where's George Gibney, the Irish one, which is a brilliant podcast about George Gibney, swimming coach who absconded to America, and it was a bad guy. But yeah, the staircase, and I didn't really know. Like, I suppose I'm in a phase in my life where if people ask me something, I'm more likely to say yes than no. So I didn't really know exactly what you're asking me, but I was like, okay,
sure, why not?
This person seems to be, interesting, and I didn't really know what I was saying yes to.
And then when you discovered there was 8-hour-long episodes, I'd say you were absolutely cursing me, were you?
There was a moment where I was like, oh, okay, I better watch all this. And but no, I was glad I did. It's funny, and not to get too philosophical, but it's funny in life where if you allow yourself to say yes to things, you'll find yourself somewhere where you didn't expect to be and enjoying yourself. So
absolutely.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked, and I enjoyed watching it.
Perfect. Well, look, I'm going to go through the boring bits first of all. So obviously the title, the one we're dealing with today, is Trial 4. What did you think of that as a title, actually? What did, when you first heard the title, I'm assuming you didn't know anything about the case. What kind of images did that awaken in your mind? What do you think it might be?
Trial 4, I thought was, I just thought it was in room 4 in the court. There was a courthouse and there was 4 rooms, or 30 rooms. It's just in room number 4. So I didn't really get the significance of it. And to sort of, not to come across as totally stupid, it was a long time into it where I went, this is the 4th trial. That should have occurred to me a lot sooner.
Well, I'm with you there, to be honest with you. I didn't think it was a great title for the documentary. I didn't really, like that as well. I was into it a while and I was like, okay, that makes sense. But I think to the layman, flicking through Netflix, it's not something that's necessarily going to grab you. And that's a pity, I think, because I thought this was a cracking little documentary, but we'll get into that more.
Well, yeah, I do think just as we'll explain, there was a lot tastier elements to the documentary than the fact that this is the 4th trial.
Yeah.
I do feel like, especially for Irish audiences, there might have been
100%.
An Irish elements that they could have highlighted and made it about that, but they didn't. That's the choice.
Yeah. And as I was saying to you in the production meeting as well, like you said to me that you've seen all the kind of the bigger ones, or the more well-known true crime documentaries like The Staircase, and I said, well, that's really interesting, because the guys who directed this, Remy Burkle and Jean-Xavier de Lestrade, really it'd be Remy Burkle, wouldn't it, and Jean-Xavier de Lestrade, I would assume, or some kind of pronunciation like that. They did The Staircase, and then they did, I don't know if you've heard of it, Sin City Law. That was a big hit at Sundance. But it was funny that you had said you had seen The Staircase and liked it, and here I was giving you a documentary by the very same guys. Did you see any similarities, production quality wise?
Really, nothing struck me. I
thought the openings were very similar in the way that they were constructed. So I don't know if you noticed the kind of imagery that was used. So in The Staircase, they used this kind of graphic of a winding staircase, and then they kind of had shots. What's the word I'm looking for? Like black and white, kind of a projector is what I'm trying to think of. Shots blasted onto the screen. And they've done a very similar kind of thing with the opening in here. I did say to you, though, that I didn't like the music for the opening of this. It reminded me kind of Dropkick Murphys style.
Dropkick Murphys, yeah. It probably was Dropkick Murphys. I didn't get a chance to look into that, but I didn't mind the music so much. I think your man, Burkle, is that his name?
Yeah.
He probably pronounces his name Burkle because he's French American. Burkle. But I think he studied graphics. I think that was his kind of thing, because he put together the trailer for the pitch to make the documentary. So I think the graphics were probably, because he was involved in the staircase as well. So probably coming from his head, I'd say.
Yeah.
I was to guess, but
determined to get that in. This is what he does.
Didn't strike me the similar. It's probably too long ago since I watched the staircase. So
but also I'm a nerd, and this is what I do. So don't worry. This is what I do. But I like, in terms of then, like you said, and I both agreed that we didn't think that the documentary's title really sold it per se or gave a whole lot away. But had you heard of this case before? Like, before I set you the task?
No, I'd never heard of it.
I hadn't either, to be perfectly honest with you. No.
It's weird because of the Irish element that it didn't make headlines over here, or, you'd imagine it's not that long ago. And there's a huge Irish element to it. I would have thought I would have heard of it, because it's funny, because I spoke to you about a different documentary, the Central Park 5, the Park 5.
Yeah, Central Park 5, a banger,
which I'd heard of that, and so obviously when I came across that on Netflix, I was drawn to watch it. But I didn't hear anything about this one now at all.
No, I never heard about this case either. But like, you'll find, if you ever choose to go back into the true crime genre community again, you'll notice that, I suppose, is that, the volume of, cases, wrongful convictions, corruption. Again, I don't want to give too much away before getting into the kind of the summary of the doc, but it's so 10 a penny over there that, I'd say the stories don't ever make it outside of America, which is great for us as true crime enthusiasts, because it means we have a plethora of cases to dive into and things we've never heard of. And, whereas I guess over here in Ireland, everybody knows everybody. There's that 6 degrees of separation. And, if there's a murder or a killing, it's front page news. It's on the news for the week, it's nearly oversaturated, and we find out every element of it. So that's the good thing and the bad thing, I suppose, about the corruption, is that it's so prevalent that there's so many cases that we're spoiled for choice. But then on the flip, that is the negative of it as well, that there is so much of it going on over there.
I do think you should watch this and be glad of our justice system, because we are very hard on ourselves as a country, and our, what we do with the law and how we run the country and all that kind of stuff. And we're very, very lucky to live in this country.
I've said it before on different episodes as well, Keith, that like, no disrespect to our own government, but I mean, trying to be funny about it, I suppose really we just have a bunch of like, farmers trying to run a country. We just don't even have the level of, in terms of finance, corruption, the power they have over there. It's just not even, it's oranges and apples. Like, we're dealing with much smaller fish in a much smaller pond here, as well. So
we're a very small country.
We're a very small country. Yeah.
We're just a little island. we're not that important. We shouldn't worry too much about things.
This is it, exactly. So look, I'm going to crack on with the summary of the documentary then. So interject if I miss anything here, or there's anything yet you feel needs to be said. So basically it is about a young black man in Boston, Sean Ellis. He's 19. To give a very rough, I suppose, synopsis of it, he's buying nappies or diapers at Walgreens. There is a police officer shot outside in his car, Detective John Mulligan. It's kind of an executioner style murder, which, to some that would say that's a personal thing, if you're going to get into the psychology of a murder and that kind of thing. And basically, very, very quickly, finger is pointed at this young black man, Sean, and that's the general gist of the story. Again, without giving too much away too early in the podcast. It starts off at the end. It starts off, with Sean doing a piece to camera. Actually, the opening shot, I think, is like a pan over the Boston skyline and then like a Boston courtroom. And then it shows Sean doing a piece to camera, talking, that kind of, at the end of it, kind of going, I never thought I'd find myself here. I never thought I'd end up in this situation. And then, his defense lawyer, who you mentioned there earlier, Rosemary Scapaccio. I'm not sure. I always butcher these names. Her talking about the case then as well. Was there anything in the first episode that surprised you or shocked you?
Not really, but like there was. It's funny the way it maybe it was just me, but the way it evolved. There was moments where I actually thought, when you watch it at the start, and you're kind of like, okay, he's definitely, because he's older, he's talking about it, so that would indicate that he's free. It's been solved, and he was innocent. He shouldn't have been locked up. But at the same time, the way it evolved, I was like, oh, maybe he did do it, or because there was his friend there was the whole hiding of the guns, and the friend and the person who saw him crouching behind the car, and there was moments where I was going, this is going to, I thought it was set up like to look like this guy was innocent and he got out free, but actually
that's interesting. Yeah.
But I'm a bit thick when it comes to things like this. I need things spelled out. So I was like, wow, imagine if that they're going to get to a point where actually he did do it, and the cops were right, because the cops were the white cops, obviously they were white Irish cops mostly.
Yeah, I know, for shame.
They were so adamant, right?
And they were you're dead right. They're very convincing in the first episode as well. So you triggered a memory in me that I forgot. I'm with you there. I actually did think that in the first episode, and again, not having any knowledge of this case, because again, I'm going to do the briefest of synopsises now of the first episode. But like I said, Sean, he's introduced as the protagonist, 19 years old. He states from the get-go that he's 22 years incarcerated. We know that. And then Mulligan is this cop who was shot dead. The only thing that I think really alluded to something being amiss, I think anyway, in the first episode, I don't know if you remember, Keith, they said that his nickname, John Mulligan's nickname, was Clearview, because every case that came up against him, any evidence he found was always in Clearview. He never had to go searching for it. So this was a little nickname that he was given by judges, lawyers, and even fellow policemen alike, kind of taking the piss out of,
Yeah, because I presume, because what I read into that was Clearview meant that he didn't have to do any paperwork. He didn't have to prove anything. Everything was just obvious.
Yeah. Conveniently.
Yeah,
and then they said as well that he had, again, I can't remember the exact figures, if not the most arrests, some of the highest arrests in the Boston Police Department as well. And then they do talk of him briefly having a history of wrongdoing. But apart from that, the first episode really went into then. Next, it went into his, I don't know if you remember, his partner, Nancy. She was the initial suspect. So that they learned that John Mulligan, after being killed, like I said, executioner style, and that tends to be a person that, that doesn't tend to be like a robbery type killing. That's a person. That's when there's emotion involved. So she was the initial suspect, and she was brought in to be questioned. And, the documentary shows, or you can hear the audio of that. And she admits to knowing that he was cheating on her at the time. She was aware of that, but that everything was fine. And they ask her point blank, did you kill him? And she says no. And that's kind of the end of the line of investigation with her, which is strange to begin with anyway, I thought.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that bit.
Yeah, well, it's because, and you'd be forgiven for it, because it's all of about, like I said, these episodes are 45 minutes, an hour long. And that's all of about 5 minutes of the first episode. Like, it's just skirted over so quickly. But I guess maybe I'm wrong.
At what point did they bring in the journalist from the Boston? Was she?
I can't think of her name, but it was Blunder. What was it? She did a kind of piece, a weekly piece called Blundering the Basics, wasn't it, or something like that? Yeah. She was really good, and she was young at the time. She was this young, enthusiastic journalist, and she was kind of like, shit, if I'd known, the wrath I was going to incur as a result of this piece, I probably would have shut up and said nothing. But she kind of starts. That's in the first episode as well. Yeah.
So she was onto them. She was saying Was it? Yeah, the Boston Globe, I think. But she was saying there was bad things going on within the organization.
Yeah.
And,
so it's sowing the seed there, I guess. It's sowing the seed from the get-go that maybe, not as all what it seems. And then kind of midway through the first episode, we become aware of Sean's existence within, they stop talking about the Mulligan murder, and we become aware then of Sean's two cousins getting killed 2 days after. And they don't really go into any detail, but other than that the police thought there might be a potential link. I don't know how. They don't really go into it too much. But Sean is called in for questioning, and like, being the nice guy he is, or at least appears to be at this point in time, he freely admits to being at Walgreens at the time of the murder. And then, his lawyer, Rosemary, is like, are they really the actions of a guilty man? Like, would you actually be stupid enough to admit to being at the location of the crime when, you're the prime suspect? You wouldn't, like, you'd make up an excuse. But somehow the police kind of find this link between the two murders, which is, I think, sketchy at best.
Yeah, there was something, and maybe that the documentary, I don't know if that was intentional, but I was a bit confused around that. I was going, what?
Yeah.
There was so much going on.
Streaming only on Peacock, Ghislaine Maxwell had it all until she met Jeffrey Epstein.
Ghislaine Maxwell's charged with enticement of minors, sex trafficking of children, and perjury.
Epstein's Shadow, Ghislaine Maxwell. Streaming now, only on Peacock.
Life gets a lot more magical when you dream. So let's dream of a vacation unlike any other. A magical Disney cruise.
Hiya, pal!
Where new stories meet tales as old as time.
Enchanté, mon ami!
And your family will be cared for the moment you step aboard. Sail from Florida to Disney's private island paradise and get ready for a dream come true with Disney Cruise Line.
It was his cousins. He was just dragged in. It was a different case. That kind of, suddenly he was involved in. It didn't seem to make sense. Nothing seemed to join up. It was confusing, and you're like, okay, hang on a second. And because it's confusing, you're like, oh, I must have missed a step there. Something must have happened that I didn't see or notice that the cops noticed or something. So maybe that was intentionally confusing. But it was when you think about it, it was bizarre. And you can see the reasoning behind it as you watch more of it, why they did what they did. But, obviously some guy comes in, not related to, just mentions this shop. It'd be like me saying, I was on my way to help my wife who was, giving birth at home, and I passed by Dunn's, and ran in to get, some wipes on the way, and they go, Dunn's.
It was him.
Yes. Okay. That's the same place that murder happened the other day. Okay, let's go.
It's funny you should say that, actually, because I was reading an interview with the director, Remy Burkle, and they asked him, the last question they asked him in the interview was, what was the message you were trying to get across? And I just thought it was, really blunt, but then I suppose, just he's telling it how it is as well. He said, you just point your finger at a poor black man in Boston to make a problem go away.
Yeah.
That's the point he was trying to get across. So it's, and that's exactly what you're just saying there. Like it was at best, it was so flimsy, this connection between Sean, and it was just because he happened to mention being there buying nappies at the time of the murder, which then kind of further on in the documentary to find out isn't actually the case. He wasn't there at the time at all.
But also, wasn't there a connection between, now I could be wrong here, somebody he knew, a friend of his or a cousin of his, and one of the other cops was in a relationship with her mother or something?
Yeah. No, you're bang on.
Am I too far ahead now?
You're not, to be honest with you, because I think like a lot of episode 1 is, like you said, a little bit confusing, maybe deliberately to show how, the confusion tactics maybe that the Boston Police Department used. Because the way the first episode ends up is that there is a car seen driving away from the crime scene. It's found belonging to this guy, Terry L. Patterson. And then they bring him in for questioning, and he says that Sean was the trigger.
That's
in
right.
his own words.
Well, we should say that he was probably. I always think of Jerry Maguire in the UK, or the Guildford Four, or the Birmingham Six.
Mm-hmm.
He was kind of encouraged to write this confession, wasn't he? Or he was
he was
like, look, we're going to lock you up. And he went, oh, the best thing for me to do is blame my friend, because if I say he killed him, and then I just get accessory or something. Mm-hmm. And that was his game, wasn't it? Because he thought, well, I'm a black guy. I mean, obviously it was with black people in Boston, they obviously knew, well, I'm not going to get away with this. So I'm just going to try and do the best. So he basically hung his friend out to dry to try and make his situation better. Is that right?
And again, you know, that you're hitting the nail on the head, and that's a really common reoccurring theme I find in true crime documentaries as well. You see this over and over and over again. You see it in the Innocence Files. You see it in you mentioned it earlier there about the Central Park 5 as well.
Central Park 5,
you know, I'm going to go down anyway because I'm black. So it's about getting the lesser charge. It's not, I'm not going to not get a charge, you know.
Because as it works out in the Central Park 5, they get one kid who's particularly, you know, I think I remember in the Central Park 5 is actually that kid's dad who said to him, just admit you did it, point the finger at those guys. You're not going to, you know, and the situation, you know, you're so tired and you've been locked up for so long, you're so confused, and you just think someone tells you this is the best thing to do for your situation. And you're sort of, you know, you're made to feel like, but you know, to point the finger at other people, you point the finger at other people. You signed the statement to say, yeah, we were all there. I was there, but he did you know, he bet the girl up, whatever. And for the cops, there's your evidence. You got a signed statement. Yeah.
And that's all they want at the end of the day. They don't, and again, this is a recurrent theme. They don't seem to be too interested in the truth. They just want a conviction, really, you know.
Yeah.
So look, moving on then to episode 2, and I'm going to absolutely hammer through these.
I should say at this point, all the telltale signs are all there that this has been done before.
Yeah.
This isn't the first time they've done this before. And if we're talking about this particular case, there's obviously many, many more black people that went to prison that didn't get someone like Scapiccio to represent them, that didn't, you know, weren't as lucky and are probably still locked up to this day for something they didn't do.
And lucky is the operative word there, because like that woman is an absolute beast. I think my favorite bits in the documentary are her, like, you know, in the courtroom, you know, tearing various members of the police force down on the stand. Like, she's an absolute animal, you know. She's not one to be reckoned with, definitely. But
no, but if you think, like, when she met Sean, she said to him, "Why you?" So obviously she probably gets letters all the time of you know, black people saying, "I'm innocent. I didn't do this. Please help me. I saw you on the TV," because she was kind of she was involved in a famous case. You know, and she made him prove to her that she should, you know, so that was what you're dealing with. So you can just imagine, and this is only Boston, you can just imagine. You know?
Yeah, 100%. But then in episode 2, again, I don't know if you remember, but it was one of my favorite parts of the documentary. They initially start out then, episode 2 was kind of, you know, it's introducing Sean as he was at 19. You know, it kind of gives a brief synopsis. Member of a street gang. He's from a poor, disadvantaged area. He was arrested the day of the cousin's funeral, and he was paraded in front of the cameras. So obviously they tipped off the local media as well. He was paraded in front of the press by the police. And he hadn't even had a chance to speak to a lawyer at this stage. So then when they're talking to, I don't know if you remember initially before Rosemary, he had these 2 guys whose names completely evade me at the moment, but they said that, you know, he hadn't even had a chance to speak to them yet. And if he had, they would have told him to stand up straight. You know, don't shield your face. You're an innocent man.
He was hiding his head.
Because he was 19. He was a kid. Like you were saying, you have an 18-year-old daughter at home. Imagine next year she gets, you know, fingered for a crime she didn't commit, like, you know, and doesn't get to speak to you or legal representation, and then she's in front of the media and cameras and on the news before you even know it. Like, it's absolutely bonkers when you think of it, when you put it in context of your own life and people you know and love. You know, it's crazy.
But also, this guy is, people are looking at us, they're looking at the telly. The way it's set up is we've got him
Yeah.
You've got the guy.
Yeah.
You're sitting at home in your house watching this, and you go, "Oh, they've got that guy that killed that girl." That's what you go straight. That's
it.
you
It's
don't worry about the
foregone conclusion. And you
Foregone
are
conclusion.
the public who are watching that TV. They're going to be the jurors who haven't yet been selected. Do you know what I
That's
mean?
the
So
thing.
you're already been fed that idea that he's guilty. How do you be objective when you've already been told this is the guy? You know what I mean?
Because obviously straight away you're trying to find reasons why he's not guilty rather than trying to find reasons why he's guilty. You know?
Yeah. But it then jumps back to, and again, you mentioned her in the previous, when we were talking about the episode 1 there, that the journalist for the Boston Globe, whose name we can't think of, I can't remember for the life of me, began with a T. But she said that she watched the TV and hoped it wasn't going to be
Tony Loki or Losi or Loki.
Tony, that's it. She hoped it wasn't going to be another Carol Stewart. And I had no idea what she was talking about. But then she went in to explain that 4 years previously, this white woman in Boston called Carol Stewart had been murdered. So basically it was a carjacking gone wrong. And once, do you remember this? Yeah. Once her husband gave the description of the black man that carjacked them and killed Carol, there was just absolute bedlam. Like, they arrested nearly every black man in Boston. They tore apart apartment blocks, and I mean, not just not just interviewing people, but actually, tearing up apartments, trashing places, and, Tony was talking about how quickly it became racial, just tearing through these communities.
It's funny because it reminded me of something happening in Northern Ireland, and I'm looking for a suspect amongst the Catholics.
Yeah.
It's very similar sort of, they just, once the guy mentioned it was a black guy, gave a brief description of him, they just locked everything down, pulling people out of their cars, as you said, like trashing apartments, just, and like totally just, and obviously whatever way things were set up racially was, anybody other than the white community would have thought, well, it's usually a black guy anyway, so they're well within their rights to do what they're doing. No sense of like, well, what are the rights of these people? They didn't have rights.
Yeah, absolutely. And then they ended up arresting.
We should say this is 1995, isn't it? Like, it's not.
Yeah, it's not that
long ago. This isn't like Rosa Parks. This is very recent.
It's not that long ago at all. But they ended up arresting this guy, Willie Bennett. And then he was going to be, I can't remember, did he confess or did he claim his innocence? I'm not really sure, to be honest with you, and I don't think I looked into it, to be perfectly honest, but they were going to stick him for it until Carol Stewart's brother-in-law came forward and admitted that it was actually himself and the husband. The husband had done it and he'd helped cover it up. And they set it up because basically they knew how racist the cops were, and they knew they'd hear black and just go for it. Yeah, and it worked almost. Except if the brother-in-law hadn't caved, there'd be another black man locked up just like that for killing an innocent white woman. And also, if that happens and he's locked up for a carjacking and killing a white woman, this black guy, it further enforces the racial stereotype, further divides the community, and you can see how all this feeds into what we now have in basically the cops lying about stuff has fed into the white people's distrust of the black community. Yeah, this false narrative.
But it's all based on lies. Yeah,
absolutely. But I thought that was one of my favorite bits in the whole documentary, because again, that was another case I'd never heard of, but that's an infamous case over in America, the Carol Stewart case. It's funny then that it being such an infamous case, I don't know, maybe
they should have been. You feel like they should have been wary.
Yeah, more clued in or something.
And when that happened, you'd imagine certain steps would have been taken to make sure that didn't happen again, or that the Boston cops should have been a clampdown. Like there should have been an investigation. They should have weeded out whatever was going on.
Or at the very least, a cloud over their word not being good. Basically. But yeah, that's kind of episode 2, I think, in a nutshell. And then at the end of it, what you mentioned there earlier was this woman coming forward, Rosa Sanchez, and basically she IDs Sean. She said that you said correctly, saw a black man stooping outside of Mulligan's SUV outside of the Walgreens. And then, the episode 2 kind of ends with her picking him out of a lineup. And again, I don't know if you remember, but it shows live footage of the lineup. I don't know why all this was recorded. That seemed really bizarre to me as well. But that there was.
I presume it was just something they started doing.
Yeah.
At that point.
It was just strange. Was it going to be on Cops or something? But that they actually had footage of the lineup, and there's the lawyer arguing with the police in charge, telling him he wants him to move around the lineup because he believes it's rigged. I don't know if it was interesting. It's great to see. I mean, look, it's brilliant that they did record it. It's great for us to be able to see this in real life and not just a reenactment or whatever.
Just because you didn't like the animated reenactments.
I didn't. No, not at all. I didn't like the animated. I just thought they were jarring. I thought they were, But then you said that they were kind of reminiscent of the kind of R&B and hip hop and rap videos of the time.
Yeah, I thought they were like I don't know. They remind me of hip hop sort of. There's an animator. I have a book somewhere. I can't see it now for the life of me. But also Gorillaz, the band Gorillaz, that kind of animation.
Very like, very like Gorillaz. I'd agree with you there.
So I kind of liked the, I suppose it's funny. There was maybe because the opening music was American Irish, Dropkick Murphys, diddly eye but rock, but the music was and a lot of the music was kind of hip hop, 90s hip hop, and then the style of the animation was 90s hip hop, I thought as well. So there was kind of like it was even almost maybe a little bit of a clash between the styles of music chosen and graphics as well. But, I thought that I liked the style of the animation, to be honest with you, but I could see why it might put it could jar, like it's almost you're dealing with a serious subject here, and there was something quite I don't know. Music video.
That's it. I think that's why I didn't like it. And like, even if I remember back to the first time I watched this documentary, it just go to show you as well how I probably watch way too much true crime documentaries, but B, how like poor our attention spans become. I thought the first episode was very slow and I nearly didn't continue on with it. And like, I'm delighted that I did, but I've read other reviewers' opinions of Trial 4 and they all say the same thing, that episode 1 is very slow, and so much so that they nearly gave up on it. And I definitely found that at the time as well. And then, I didn't particularly like the animation. And then the music as well. I was just like, it was just a bit mishy-mashy for me. But it gets better as the production goes on. And in fairness to him, like, he's recording this over a series of years. Like, your skill set, your style, everything is going to evolve. It's very hard. I think in this documentary, you do see the evolution of his style throughout it. I think it's much more crisp and sharp, and the production qualities much more in keeping with Netflix style towards the last couple of episodes. They don't, do the animation so much or that kind of thing. The kind of, I noticed in the last couple of episodes, instead of the animation, they do, like, I suppose what you'd see in a courtroom, those kind of, I'm not sure what the correct word is, that kind of 3D scale reenactment thing that they do. So it kind of comes up from the ground. Do you know what I'm talking about? And they'll kind of go, this was the trajectory to the wall, and they'll put in all the mathematics and all. They use that in the last couple of episodes instead of that kind of, they keep, when they're showing the shooting of Mulligan, they keep using that graphic over and over again. But they do use that.
I don't think I'd have stuck with it if you hadn't asked me to.
But like, and then it's a little cracker, like, as it goes on. It's just a little bit slow, like, to begin with. But then that episode, then episode 2 kind of ends with it ends hanging on a question, as most episodes of true crime documentaries do. And the question is about these detectives, Sarah, Brazel, and Robinson. These are the three guys who keep finding the evidence against Sean, who keep finding the people who are IDing Sean. As you correctly said, one of them is in a relationship with Rosa Sanchez, the girl who picks him out in the lineup.
Who's a key witness.
And a key witness, yeah. He's gone out with her aunt. I think it was a Sarah. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was a Sarah who was dating her. But yeah, that's kind of the question episode 2 ends on is, how come these three guys are the ones finding all the evidence? And not only that, but they're actually like, this isn't their area.
That's not their area. Yeah. They're a different.
They're drugs.
Almost. Yeah.
They're drugs. Yeah. They're nothing to do with homicide at all.
As the lady from the Boston Globe points out, like they're in every picture, they're bringing them into court, they're standing, they're everything is coming through them.
Yeah.
And she kind of explained how many cops are involved or could be involved or should be involved. It's not even their department, and they're just, their hands are on everything,
Yeah.
Obviously straight away, like, everybody must be turning a blind eye.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
and then
everybody.
look, I know hindsight is 2020 and we're watching this, looking back and kind of going, here, how could you not have known? But I guess as well, in not necessarily the police's defense, but maybe in the public at large's defense, we're a world of social media now where we have all this information at our fingertips. We can, you've seen it in other documentaries like Don't Fuck with Cats. You can nearly be an armchair sleuth now. You can nearly solve a crime for the comfort of your own home without ever looking at the crime scene. But like, we're talking about a time when, if you didn't hear it on the telly, on the radio, or see it in a newspaper, you didn't know about it. And that was only if you watched them or read them. Whereas now we're getting all this information. So I guess nowadays this would seem like a much more straightforward case that you would imagine would be solved much quicker. But I guess
have we seen has McAnally been introduced yet?
No,
the big Irish boss. He hasn't been introduced yet. Okay.
He hasn't been introduced yet. So but again, I feel like we can kind of fly through the next couple episodes because it then goes to trial. So there's a first trial, which results in a mistrial. There's the second trial, which results in a mistrial. And then the third trial, which obviously results in his conviction. And what episode 3 and 4 are about are basically what changed between those trials. And they go into a little bit more with Rosa Sanchez and the aunt, and how, I don't know if you remember, Sanchez didn't initially ID him. Do you remember that? She ID'd another guy. They took his picture away, took her out of her room for a private chat down to their car. This is Sarah Robinson and the other guy. Bring her outside of the station, and she comes back up to the lineup again, and this time IDs him magically. But
yeah,
it's insane. Like, it's just crazy.
But also there was a lot of question about whether it should have even gone to a third trial, and what, like, they were just, it reminded me of the Nice Treaty here in Ireland. They just kept
going till they got the result they wanted.
Kept coming back until they got the result they wanted, which is blatant for everybody to see. And that's why I keep saying there's so many cover-ups, there's so many people turn the blind eye, there's so many obvious, like, why do they really want to convict this guy? There's, come on, alarm bells,
Yeah, 100%. And then as well, they talked to Tia, who was Sean's girlfriend at the time. And she had a kid, not Sean's kid, but she had her own kid. And basically she said that, initially she was like, 100% Sean's innocent. There's no way he's done this. And then the police were harassing her daily. Like, her house was surrounded. And then the DA at the time was super friendly and said, like, Sean is a criminal. He did this. He's going to hurt you. You need to side with us so we can protect you. And then they fingerprinted her. Do you remember this? They fingerprinted her. And suddenly they found the gun that was implicated in the crime, and Mulligan's gun buried on this vacant lot, again by a Sarah and Robinson. And her fingerprints that had been taken a day or two before this discovery were miraculously found on the gun. None of Sean's fingerprints were ever found on the gun, funnily enough, but her fingerprints were found on the gun.
And the implication was that he hid the gun in her house, or she hid it for him under a table or something like that. I was kind of a bit confused by all that, but yeah, she ended up being put in a position where she was implicated in the crime as well. And did she testify against him then?
She did testify against him because the DA, who, like I said, was friendly at first, came to her house then and point blank said to her, "We can take your child if you don't, you don't play ball."
Jesus.
Yeah. And again, was she 17?
Yeah.
I don't think she was 18. I think she was 16 or 17. Like a baba.
But they were threatening to take her child away unless you'd do anything.
Of course you would. Of course you would. You would at, me at 34, I would do that. Never mind at 16, 17.
But it just shows the balance of power,
100%.
I'm Devin.
And I'm Steph.
And we are the podcast from the crypt.
Join us every Friday as we discuss accounts of murder, mayhem, paranormal, and all things spooky.
Plus a dash of comedy to help soothe your soul during these chilling tales.
You can find us anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts. Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, etc.
Also, you can find us at thepodcastfromthecrypt.buzzsprout.com, and you can choose from there how you'd like to listen.
You can find us on Instagram and Facebook, both at The Podcast from the Crypt.
Be sure to tune in and listen to us discuss what nightmares are made of. Let's get weird.
But look, as we said anyway, then the jury deliberate. I think they were hung after, they deliberated for like 8 days or something. It was something ridiculous anyway. They were hung and then it was declared a mistrial. Terry Patterson was found guilty and sentenced. Yeah. And then Sean's second trial began, and that was another mistrial. And they talked to a juror as well, female juror. They talked to her on screen and they asked her kind of why, in reflection, looking back on the trial 20 odd years after the fact, why didn't you find him guilty? And she said that they all felt that something didn't add up, that there was something been withheld.
Catherine Hunt, was that her name?
By the police, I think so. You're great for the names. We're going to have you back.
No, I just have the list in front of me with the pictures.
And then trial 3 obviously begins, and as opposed to, the 8-day deliberation that the previous trials had, this one had a 3-hour deliberation, and Sean's found guilty. And he's sentenced then to life with no chance of parole, which is, again, a really common thread you'll see in true crime documentaries as well. It always seems to be life with no chance of parole.
Streaming only on Peacock.
John Wayne Gacy is suspected of having killed as many as 32.
Straight from the killer's mouth.
They want you to believe that I alone committed these murders.
The new gripping 6-part documentary series that investigates the crimes that shocked the nation.
The thing everybody thought they knew wasn't the whole story.
John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise. All episodes streaming now. Only on Peacock.
Life gets more magical when you dream. So dream of a Disney cruise filled with magic and wonder.
Hiya, pal!
Sail from Florida to Disney's private island paradise and get ready for a dream come true with Disney Cruise Line.
And is this because they need this to not come back up again? They need this guy to go away. Yeah. To stay away and to never, obviously if he was up for parole, he'd be able to sort of get an attorney and try and defend himself. It's Jesus.
With America as well, though, I think I had said to you in our production meeting as well, there's they've monetized the criminal system over there, so it benefits them to always go for life with no parole, because then they have, in effect, if not a slave in shackles in the deep south, a slave by another name in a justice system where they can't ever get out, and it's free labor, it's slave labor for life. So that's you know, that's the long and the short of it. That's, I think I was telling you before about the documentary 13th, which is about the 13th Amendment. And that's literally what it is. This amendment to the Constitution, which said slavery is illegal unless you're convicted of a crime. So that's the loophole that was put in there.
And the prisons in America are run by private companies.
Of course they are. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was an uproar there a couple of years ago when they found out that, you know, Victoria's Secret had all of their stuff made in American prisons, amongst others. I mean, they were just one of the more famous names.
But there's a very famous Irish shop that maybe I won't name, that is owned by the same company that owned prisons in America.
That's right. Which is
very sad to see.
Yeah, it is. But if this documentary shows us anything, it shows that, you know, we're not above.
We're not squeaky clean here in Ireland.
No. So This is what we kind of jump into then, I suppose, in the next couple of episodes. I think one of the episodes of the documentary is actually called that, isn't it? It's like
the Irish.
Black Irish or something, isn't
Black
it?
Irish.
Black Irish. Yeah. And it's kind of twofold, because it's about obviously the dark side of the Irish immigrant cops, but it's also this new is it DA she's going for? I think it's
she's running for district attorney.
Yeah.
She's black. Her dad is Irish, I think.
Yeah, he's first or second generation, right?
Her mother's black. Yeah. She's a powerhouse.
She is. So it's kind of talking about the two of them. And then I suppose in the episodes leading up to that, they're talking about, you know, obviously Sean is jailed. He's in there, and they're then talking about how he has to. There's this thing called Rule of 30. So in order to get a new lawyer, you have to fire your counsel for ineffectiveness. So it's something he becomes aware of while he's in jail, watching a show. He sees Rosemary talking about this guy she's representing in a very similar situation. So Rosemary being obviously his future counsel then. So he sees her on this TV show while he's in jail, and she's talking about this guy she's representing in a very similar type of story. And so Sean looks into how can he get her instead of the lawyers that he currently has. And the lawyers that he...
They're David and Norman, David Duncan and Norman Zalkind. And they were really... I mean, you kind of look back on it at this stage and go, maybe they didn't do a great job, but they were really tried to do a great job for him. You know, they really were on side, and he liked them. You know,
and he was definitely
he didn't want
torn about getting rid of them. Yeah. Like he says that like it was the only option to get new counsel was to use this Rule of 30, and you had to fire your counsel for ineffectiveness. And look, it doesn't seem like they've held it against him, because I mean they take part in the documentary and they speak in his favor. So it's they understand it was
a procedure. It wasn't.
It was a procedure. It was nothing personal. Yeah. Exactly. And then in that episode as well, they kind of talk about then they give Rosemary's backstory, which she's from the projects herself, and then she was the only one in her family to graduate high school, to go to college, get an education, and so that she said, if she got an education, this is what she was going to do. She was only going to take on clients from similar backgrounds, And
we should, at this point, look at the fact that it's the women. So there's Rosemary, there's that lady who was running for DA, the Black Irish lady. And also, if you think about his friend, I don't know if we've met Elaine yet.
Oh, Elaine Murphy, his godma. What he calls her?
If we talk about Tony, the reporter, like it's men. The women are the ones trying to do the right thing.
And I never thought of it like that at all. Actually,
there's not one.
Yeah. Rachel Rawlings. Rachel Rawlings is the black woman running for DA. That's I knew it was Rachel, but I never actually. That's a very good point.
The men, apart from his defense attorneys, and a couple of journalists, like it's all the women who are trying to get to the bottom of it and trying to solve it and try to do the right thing, and aren't like she as an attorney. She's not friends. Rosemary, she's not friends with the cops, where you'd find it in a city like Boston, you need to be friends with the cops, and these things are sort of all tied up. So it's the women that are showing the way here.
Yeah. There you go. This is what's great about getting another opinion. I never even actually thought of it like that, but I guess you're right. Actually, it's a fairly straight split, isn't it? It's all the cops are guys, and
but it's worth noting because women aren't as easily bought, or well, not in this case anyway.
Yeah, not in this case, definitely. But yeah, so that we're introduced to Rosemary, given her backstory, and basically, like, she, as you said earlier, she's kind of like, why you? And then she talks about meeting him, and she's saying, he's this lanky, tall, skinny, unassuming black kid with a stutter. And she said, I didn't see a criminal. I just didn't see, this is not a cold, I think she said a cold-blooded killer or something to that effect. She was like,
she knew, she had a good gut instinct. And also around that time, one of the cops, I don't know if it was Edward McNally, about these attorneys, if she gets the conviction overturned, that's a big payday for her. So it plants a seed. You're like, oh, maybe she's just in this for the money, and she sees, I still wasn't, there was always moments where you go, oh, hang on a second, they throw in these things where you think maybe she's only in it for the money, maybe he's not innocent, maybe so they're quite clever that way as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the measure of a really good true crime documentary, I suppose, is that every episode in the docuseries, it should end on a cliffhanger, or at least a very provoking question, because then it encourages that binge watching. So you're not going to leave it there. You're going to keep watching to the end, because you're like, shit, what happened? So that episode then ends on Rosemary kind of looking into Mulligan, and just briefly, just to see whether she's actually going to even take Sean's case. And just by barely scraping the surface, she believes that he's a dirty cop, because she finds out how they buried his finances. Do you remember that? So that's how this next episode then starts, is how literally, I think it was maybe the next day or the day after, so maybe 2 days after Mulligan's murder, there was a thing on the news in Boston whereby they kind of said that things look shady in regards to his finances, that he had these Corvettes. There was some other car that I'd never heard of, but apparently that was a luxury car as well. And he had like 8 luxury condos.
Properties.
Yes, suspiciously in his sister's name, and valued at $1 each or something. So that's,
But he had taken a loan out to buy them, and he owed the money or something like that.
But she basically had that information within seconds of looking into this guy. So this is what determined, her opinion that she was going to take Sean's case. She was like, hang on now, this is looking very suspicious. How come this wasn't spoken about more in the media or brought to light? And then they're talking to Elaine Murphy. So Elaine was this lady that it's not something I've ever heard of. It's a Metco kind of, what would you call it? It's kind of not a fostering system, but whereby kids from disadvantaged areas got to go to school for a year, or maybe all of their young lives in a better school. So they're bussed out to these better, predominantly white areas. So Sean was in this Metco program, and Elaine Murphy was the mother in his host family. So I think he lived with them for like a year or something, was it? I think
he was in school with her son, and they became really good friends. And
as part of the system. Yes. But she has since then, she was living in Boston at the time. She's since moved up to Canada somewhere. And then one day, out of the blue, this newspaper lands in her lap, and it's Sean on the front.
Just some friends called in, just happened to call in on that day, and they just left a newspaper on the worktop. Just like, when you think about it, like total coincidence, a zillion to one chance of it happening.
Yeah.
And she discovers he's in jail.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, even though she hadn't, I mean, I think he was like maybe 8, 9 when she had him as, when they were his host family, but she said it wasn't the Sean that she knew. And then, you know, like you said, coincidentally, some twist of fate, she's this writer. So she starts writing about it as well, and doing articles about it, where she is in Canada. And she kind of gives a brief synopsis into Sean's childhood then as well. I don't know if you remember, you know, about how his brother drowned. His older brother drowned, and then his mother became a crack addict, and then the father left.
And this is important because we, you know, even like at the end of the day, Sean is innocent. Spoiler alert. But even if he was guilty, and this is the thing that we do all the time, is we don't look into the reasons the person ended up the way they did. And if you see this family, it's a black family, they have to survive so much more hardship than we do. Like we don't have the empathy we should have towards these other people, because you know, you would look at his mother and go, she's a crack addict, you know, it's her fault. What do you expect? You know, no wonder her son is in prison. You know, there's no smoke without fire there. Sure, look, his mother's a crack addict. And then when you look into it and you realize that her son died, and her grief was so great that she ended up becoming addicted to drugs to try and get through life, because she probably would have at that point chosen to die. But she, you know, if you, as a mother, you need to be around for your other kids, you know, and that's why people self-medicate and become crack addicts. And it's very important that, you know, that's shown as well. That tragedy happened to that family. And, you know, and even Sean talking about his brother that he still missed to this day, and he still visited, and still, you know, it's so tragic. And it's to look at that family's life and how they were struggling just to live.
Absolutely. And then, I mean, it brings them back into that cycle then again, because he's coming from parents, you know, that aren't educated. And then he himself, he says, even, he's like, you know, this happened. My brother drowned. My mother's on drugs. My father left. I graduated from high school. He said, I tried to find jobs, but nobody would hire people from his neighborhood. They'd see his address and that would just be an instant. And he said, so what can you do when you sell drugs? So you do fall into that lifestyle of, you know, you have bills to pay. You have a family to support, you know, father's gone, your mother's on drugs, she's not going to do it. He's got younger siblings. He has no option.
It's actually, in a weird way, very responsible of him to start selling drugs.
It is.
To try and make some money, you know, to pay the bills. And you can't blame him.
Yeah. I mean, maybe not the job of choice, but I mean, how many 17, 18-year-olds have to go out after doing their Leaving Cert in Ireland and find jobs to support their younger siblings and their mom? You know, not many. So like you said, it can be seen as an admirable thing in many ways. At least he had
and also
wherewithal to.
Our view of the choice to sell drugs is totally different to their view of the choice to sell drugs. You know, it's not. It's chalk and cheese. You know, we see it as black and white. It's not the same for those guys, for people like that. You know.
But so then, like, we digress. But this is what happens when you start chatting about these true crime documentaries. Like,
you can edit all this out.
No, this is brilliant. This is brilliant, because this is what you want. You want your, you know, breaking down the documentary and what it made you think and what it made you feel. And like, I mean, that's why I love documentaries. They're educational in nature, you know, and I'm a sponge. I want to know everything. So nosy by nature. But so Rosemary decides to take on this case. And like I said, she just learns that Mulligan is, you know, just a bad egg. And that it seems like the police are hiding information that Mulligan, Sarah, Robinson and Brazil were all corrupt, and that they were ripping off drug dealers. Remember this? They were literally